Dr. Chris Lamont here, and this is the first class. There is actually 7 classes in this particular seminar, but this class is a sample class to see if it will work for you, right? Otherwise, don't sign up for it. The introduction is out there. That's a separate link that I'll probably send you, and then I'll send you this class, and then we'll wait to hear from you to see what you want to do. You will need a partner in this because you're going to need to exchange a little bit, and I will talk about that. But this is sample class. I'm going to read a little bit. Normally, I don't do this, but I'm going to do this, the content you'll get, but I'm doing this to kind of set the stage a little bit here. It seems to be a universal feature of human perception, a feature of underpinning of human epistemology, that the perceiver shall perceive only the product of his perceiving act. He shall not perceive the means by which that product was created. The product itself is a sort of work of art. Gregory Bateson. So I'm using Gregory Bateson just because of the fact that he's been in the field and written books after 30 years of experience. So he doesn't have an ism that he's putting forth. He's not associated with some organization. He's just expressing ideas that he's discovered. These are ideas that I'm expressing that I've also discovered, right? Until they're beneficial for some people, and we'll take a look at that, okay? Patterns, excuse me. Patterns are not dichotomies. They're not a right, wrong. They're not a good, bad. They're not poles on a range. By their very nature, they're kind of an unconscious piece of a mapping. Just like when you go to work and you come home, you could be listening to music and driving home, and it's the way you drive all the time, and you could not remember seeing anything different. And maybe somewhere on the way home, there was an accident, or they built a new building, and you didn't even notice it. And then all of a sudden, a couple of weeks later, you finally see it, and I wonder how long they've been building that. Well, it's been going on for quite a while. That's because we're really good at following unconscious patterns. Arthur A. Miller says that 7 plus or minus 2 bits is the very nature of what we can be conscious of. The reason it's bits is the size of the bits vary a little bit, also dependent on unconscious programming. That really means that 93% of the time, more or less, everything that's operating around you is unconscious. Don't seem like that because our head is full of what we're attending to. But we're only attending to a really small piece. We don't want to mess with those unconscious programs. They keep us alive. They work really good. There's nothing wrong with them. Perfect, right? We're not all the same. We're different. I don't care what you believe in. We're different. There are lots and lots of books on this stuff, tons and tons of programs on this. We're not doing anything complicated here. We're not trying to learn anything. We're utilizing a tool, okay? So just simply think of it as kind of a mapping, right? Some people always like to go the same way. When I go, I like to go different ways, right? If I have to go a lot, then I will start to figure the shortest way because I want to facilitate getting it done. If I only go once a month, I will go a different way because I want to have an adventure in seeing something. Do you think I think about that? I'm telling you that because I've noticed that about me. And I've had people with me, they say, why don't you always go the same way? Why are you going this way? And it's like, oh, I didn't even know I was doing that. I just like, that's an unconscious piece. Those pieces, it's not a right or wrong. That's what's really tough. We're not doing this because we want to figure something out. Unconscious means it does not go through your intellect. Forget it. Not going to go through your intellect, but it can get corrupted. We can get influences on it. As a matter of fact, they're very susceptible to influences. Even a greater fact is that they depend on influences because there's an entire network of them. Okay. The assortment arrangements of patterns that contribute to uniqueness and they influence each other. All patterns are all individual patterns, but they all influence each other. So if we have 2 people with exactly the same pattern, you put 5 or 6 or 10 or 20 or 30 different sequences in there, is not going to look the same. It's not going to behave the same. All right. Can we see these? Well, most certainly we can feel them. That's why you need a partner. Do we want to correct them or fix them? No, we don't want to do anything to them, but open them up. Let me give you an example. When I was much, much younger, which greater than yesterday, much younger, which a long time ago, I was actually dating a young lady who was in some New Thought church. And we were going out, having dinner, having conversations, and she was impressed by some of my ideas and the way I thought, because I had a background in psychology and behavioral things, and I would notice people and I'd say, wow, look at that person. What's this? What's what they're doing? This person's going to do this, you know? So you start to get to where you notice those things when you study them, right? Not a big deal. It's kind of people that study mathematics see number combinations, right? Whatever. So she was interested because she had never seen that before. So she actually talked to her minister. They had a group of teens that were a discipline problem. I don't know a whole backstory on it. All I know is that they had a weekend retreat out in the woods somewhere at a retreat center for 14, 16, I think it was 16 kids that were different genders that were discipline problems. And they were all part of that particular church. So the minister came and had breakfast with me and talked to me and wanted to know what I would charge and wondered if I would do a workshop with these kids. And I said, yeah, sure. What the heck, you know? So I went out and I did a workshop with these kids. So what I did was really simple. I just sat them all down, got them calmed down, got them into a deeper trance. We would call that a meditation, right? So I got them into a deeper trance. I told them I was going to bring in a spirit guide, and each one of them would be assigned a unique spirit guide. And as they sit there in this trance state, relax, in this meditation state, relax, which is a trance state, they could then feel that spirit guide coming in their body and doing healings on them. And so just don't do anything, just notice it, feel that, just attend to that, you know, and then we'll come out of trance after about half hour, 35 minutes, and then we'll move around a little bit and we'll kind of share what we felt. And we just and we did that whole sequence for a whole day of that weekend. Right? And they were just taken back by the results. I don't know what the results were. Frankly, it was just fun. I enjoyed doing it. I didn't get paid very much, but it was very interesting. And I like kids. And these were just good kids, but they had some bad habits, right? So that was so inspiring to them that they actually invited me the next year to come out and actually do more with a little bit bigger group. And not only that, but they contacted a few of the ministers trying to get me to do some. So after doing them, I wound up doing a Bible-style church. Minister called me and said, can you do anything with my kids? I've got 8 that are a real big problem. So I did a day and a half retreat with 8 kids. So with them, I had to get into a trance, bring in an angel. My goodness gracious, you know, and that angel was going to work on them and blah, 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 blah. What I was really doing was just simply working on unconscious programs, allowing it to update, allowing them to get their attention away from the influences for a second. Just relax, go into a deeper trance and allow this stuff to resurface and come on out. And then move around a little bit and interact with each other, just talking about what experiences they had, whatever, it doesn't matter. That opened those all up and also had a profound result. And then somewhere in the whole process, that lady quit seeing me and I found a different girlfriend and I kind of moved on. It's just all part of life. Do you get this? So this is kind of what we're going to do with a partner. But we don't have to have a spirit guide and we don't have to have an angel or anything else. We're just simply going to play with the patterns. We're going to play with the patterns. And the first pattern that we play with, there's a guy named Edward Bono, and he's kind of a math guy. And he figured out mathematically in a tit-tat-toe game, right? Where you got 9 boxes He figured out that by placing whole and unrepeated numbers in each of the 9 squares in different sequences would produce 362,880 variations. So when we start to look at 7 patterns, we're going to have a lot of variations. We're not going to do anything logical with them, intelligent with them. Absolutely nothing, right? I want you to be able to not have some story driving it. I want you to be able to sit with your partner, because I think it's a benefit to sit with your partner and start to recognize it's like, wow, this is your unconscious pattern. And it's just updating. And the only reason it updates is because there's been some influence that made it go a certain way. It then assumes that's the way it's supposed to go. If you allow it to uniquely expose itself, it will update automatically. Nothing for you to do. You may have to do that exercise, that meditation, like I did for a whole day or a couple of days. You might have to do that several times. You don't have to do it for hours one day. You could do it like a couple of times one day, a couple of times another day later with your partner, whenever you can get together. For you guys, I've had a lot of experience with this kind of stuff. You could probably do it on a phone, no problem. If you're really new to being able to sit across from somebody and being able to do an entrainment, that is, allow yourself to attend to them without your judgment, without your bias, without that. This is the way I do it. Lose that part of you and just notice how they do it. So you kind of feel that you're pushing that veil to the side and you're just relating. That's all. Don't become them. That doesn't serve you in any way, shape, or form. Whatever they're doing is not better than you. Let me give you an example. My wife and I go for a walk in the woods, and we do that a lot. If we're walking in the woods and we see something moving in the grass on the side, my wife will stop, and so will I. And we pause for a second, listening, and then we see some more movement. She'll instinctively step back one step. I'll instinctively step back forward one step. Right? Do you start to see there's no right or wrong there? I step forward to look and see what it is. She steps back because of a caution. It is a caution. And she's not less brave than I am. She's a very brave person. And most certainly if I looked and saw it was a snake, I would jump back. But no matter what I jump back, she'd be one step behind me. Just a variation in a pattern. That's all it is. Is it wiser? Well, maybe if it was a snake, but if it was just a gopher or a cat or a bird, oh, then it wouldn't make any difference. I'm more at risk than she would be, maybe by a small amount, right? Neither one of us have been endangered in any way, shape, or form. We're always cautious. We do a lot of walks in the woods. We see bears, we see all kinds of critters, not a problem. We don't, I might take a step towards a bear, she'll grab me and say, yeah, no, we're going this way. I said, yeah, okay, all right. No, I just was going to get a better look. No, let's go. Do you understand? Those aren't wrong or right. It's just a response that comes up. I didn't sit there and think about it. She didn't sit there and think about it. Those are automatic responses. If there's a problem with that, somebody with a problem with that would not go out in the woods because they'd be afraid. Now, that would be an issue. So then we would have to say, wow, you're afraid to go anywhere near grass, anywhere where there something could be hiding. You're just terrified of the whole idea. Well, now we have an issue. So that means that something happened. That pattern doesn't normally do that. Then something happened. It could have been with that pattern. It could have been with another pattern that's influenced this one. There's no way you're going to intellectually know that. So we go through a series of them, updating them to see if we can release that experience that's put in there. It's also unconscious, right? If we can sit there and feel it, get a sensation when you're working with someone else and you're feeling what they're going through, and then you later both have a conversation about it, it validates what they feel. They feel something moving. Wow, it feels like it's going back and forth like this, or it feels like it's pushing on me, or whatever story you have, that's fine. You don't have to change anything. You don't have to do anything. It's just a sequence. They build on each other. And you start this process. The first one we're going to work with is a pattern called towards and away. Really, really simple. It just means that we all do this. If there's a danger, like I alluded to, then we might step away. If there's something pleasant, all of a sudden, we might go towards it, right? So we hear nice music playing, we might walk through the park towards the music to hear more of it, right? If you hear something rustling, once again, in the grass, you might step away from it. We all do that to some degree. Some a little more, some a little more this way, not a problem. But then you get into issues that start to be from other patterns or from this pattern itself. Once again, almost impossible to tell. Someone, say, for example, is an overachiever. They're just really driven to do something. Is that towards because they want to be the best? I don't think so. I think that's in a way because they see not being the best as a danger. And you see how they can get augmented. This is an unconscious program that's pushing you. So what happens then for them as they drive hard to become the best, they have all these obstacles that come up that are threats. They try to be the first one somewhere, they get a speeding ticket, they try to get up in the front row, they fall down, something happens, they can't hear something, something moves. It almost seems like there's something counter going on with them. So that's because it's in a way, you actually, in the pattern, to be able to move away from not being the best, try to avoid that and try to be the best. As you move away from that, you drag along threats. So all these are encumbered in a pattern because innately we're born with somewhat of a fear, science tells us, however right that is. Science tells us we're born of snakes and spiders, right? Testing small children, they'll may go friendly with lots and lots of things, but when it comes to snakes and spiders, they're cautious and they move back. So they're assuming that's kind of already in the programming, right? Okay, that sounds good. So at least it's a piece of research. It doesn't tell you that's 100%, but it most certainly tells you that they found significant, which means more than random, which is probably more than 50%. But for whatever it's worth, it seems that there is an influence. That's what I'm saying. And it's with small children that are just can crawl. And so that response shows up in them. So these are basic patterns. Not a whole lot to do, but practice. That's it. This does require that you sit there with your friend and they're sitting there and you say, okay, I want you to respond to me as if I was a pain. That's probably easy for a lot of my friends. And so see what happens. What do you feel? What do you feel as they define me as a pain? What do you feel in that? Now, define me as someone you like, someone that maybe could help you in some way, shape, or form. You know, and so see what that happens. You can actually play with these and you can get a felt response. What you feel, what information comes in your head is totally insignificant, meaningless, totally meaningless. Don't do anything with it. All we want to do is open this up. And as we open this up, it will update. You'll have to do it probably 3, 4, 5 times. But most certainly, if you sit with this person and do it several times, play with it a little bit for not a long time, 3, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, then switch, 4 or 5 minutes and take a break, go walk around, have a cup of coffee, go for a little stretch, come back, maybe do it again. That will start to open it up and start to play with this. It's really very, very simple. Can it get complex? Is there a lot of data on this? Yeah, I think probably 300-400 hours of classes to teach this stuff. Uh, I've never taken any classes, but I've most certainly been working with it and have taught classes for a long time on this. So I don't put any terminology onto it. I don't have a particular ism. I have picked out of a whole bunch of programs. I don't think anybody has an idea of exactly how many patterns there are. People have defined all the way up to, I've seen people 60, 100, 150, I don't know. When I read the material, it's like, boy, that's a fine line. I guess it's just more discernment into it. You can keep finding more and more and more. I don't think any of the information is basically important. All we're doing is taking a package, a building block. We're literally having the first layer has got a lot of range, has a lot of movement, because we both do away and towards. And so it has a lot of movement. And so when you sit there, you can feel the movement. You can feel the movement in your partner when you train with them. It's like, wow. As you get into these, you're going to see that maybe later on, one of those other patterns, you may be similar in the way you react as your partner is. But because we're stair-stepping these, you're going to find that they totally perform differently in movement differently. So we're really looking at how it moves. What do you get a sense of? So our conversation was like, wow, I could feel you tense up, or I could feel you just relax, or I could feel you like to start to move back, or like you wanted to rotate a little bit. It just felt like there was a rotation, like you were going to turn and run, or it felt like you were leaning forward. Actually, physically, it looked like you were leaning forward. It's like, wow, that's kind of interesting. Those are the things that we're looking for. Just simple stuff that allows you to attend to that pattern, maintain that small piece of conscious attention to that pattern long enough to get a sensation in your body. So we can talk about the sensations. That opens it up, and then it has an opportunity to look around and say, wow, is this time for an update, right? We get updates on our computer, and it says, you've got updates, and you do them whenever you want to. Doing an update is probably wise, but sometimes doing an update creates problems. I think maybe you've had some problems with updates. I have. And then next thing I know, certain things don't work, and then I've got to go back. And there was one of my older computers, I had to go back and go back to a reset point and delete an update to get some of my software to work. And then after that, I was very cautious about what updates I did. Don't get too stirred up in this. Just let it settle up to the surface. What you're starting to notice, probably, no test for it, because there are too many influences, but they'll start to update. So you'll start to feel a little differently. Will you see a behavior outpicturing? Well, those kids that I talked about most certainly started getting, after that weekend, they started getting a behavior difference. They listened, they paid attention to it. Did some of them still get in trouble? Yes, but less in trouble, more attentive. After 2 years of those, most certainly there was a big difference. And not only that, I actually heard from some of the kids. We actually kind of built an occasional friendship with a few of them. They would contact me because I'd say, hey, here's my email address, contact me if you have a problem. And they actually responded, and they actually did. So it's really kind of fun to be able to get that interaction from them. I would have liked to have been able to have them isolate the patterns separately and then stack them systematically so they could kind of build a framework. But I didn't have the ability to do it with them. They didn't have enough life experience at that time to be able to do that. And it was counter, I would imagine, to their idea of education. Education is all about your brain and your ideas. It's kind of an assumption that you make decisions about everything, but in truth, we run off of patterns and reactions almost all the time. Very, very few decision-making involved in life in general. And when we do make some decisions, why we then stick with that whole thing as a pattern for a long, long time, and then it becomes difficult. Think about any habit you have. Then it's difficult to overcome that habit. So the whole commitment here is updating. I no, I cannot say that enough. I'm not going to go over the exercises. In each one of these, there'll be an exercise to do with your partner. In the introduction, there's an exercise if you're alone, and you could do it with yourself. It's not very effective by yourself. Most certainly, it will be if you were to do it for maybe every day for a month. You would then start to feel some differences in yourself. You really become very vulnerable when you relate to another person, right? All of us know that, right? And so at that point, when we're relating to another person, all of a sudden, this gets staged up. There's an accountability that, not an accountability in story, an accountability in feeling, like all of a sudden comes up when you're sitting in front of someone. You're like, oh, you want to straighten up, you want to sit upright, you want to whatever, right? That's our whole cultural nature, is to relate. And so all this package comes into play, and that structure's in play. Our attention goes on that. And since we've narrowed it down to just one small pattern on these 7, the first, as you're sitting there, you'll start to feel, wow, I can actually feel that. Well, that's kind of interesting. And then your partner over there says, wow, do you feel this? And you're having this dialogue as you're sitting there with it. And then maybe sometimes you just want to be quiet and sit with it and see where it goes, see what it connects up to, see what pushes and pulls on it. Sometimes it's really fun. As we get to the more advanced ones, you'll feel it move in a direction and something will intercede it. And it's kind of like it jumps. Like, whoa, wow, that's really weird. That's an influence from something else. It actually maps it like a labyrinth. It really maps it. What we've seen, throw a little science in this, and then I'll shut up. What we've seen with mice, sorry about that, but they're cheap. What we've seen with mice is you put them in a maze and they run a maze. Well, they use a maze that they can change the petitions. So what they found is that they run a mouse in a maze and they see how long it takes for that mouse to learn the maze, where it can just run it. And then they'll change the petitions. Oh, the poor mouse, now he's got to figure out a new maze. So they'll do that about 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 times. And then they go back to the original maze. And they found, yes, the learning curve is much shorter. So that means there's an experience in memory of updating. And then when they run them through, even in a broken down system, in other words, they go through, say, 8 different changes, and then they go back and then they make changes again and have the mouse runs till it's comfortable. Maybe the first time it had to run 8 or 9 times to learn that maze. Well, now this time maybe it runs it 3 times and it's got it. Then they'll switch around with some of the rest. They found the learning curve is much better. That's a good indication that they have updated those patterns. So now they have a different relationship. They can adapt to changing situations in life. If you have not noticed the newspapers, we are in a changing situation in life called an evolutionary change or climate change, or whatever term you want to play with. It's kind of like angels and spirit guides, whatever term you want to put with it. But nonetheless, things are changing out there. World order is changing. Political science is changing. The wealth gap is getting bigger in some countries. All those gaps, all those things, all those changes are occurring. So there's a structure of change in the labyrinth that we're running through. We really need to update these programs, and lots of science, such as it is, to indicate the fact that when we open these up, they learn and adapt much quicker. And so this is our goal, was to expand that range of that out, allow these programs not to be limiting. They're limiting to protect you so that they're unconscious, so you don't have to think. They're automatic. We expand them out a little bit, you're going to find that as the surface is up, you're going to have more options. They'll expand. They'll have more choices. It won't put you more at risk, but it's going to make you wiser. It's going to filter out a lot of the other things. We could make up a story. We could say, my wife, who's a little more cautious than I am, maybe had a bad experience when childhood. Maybe something scared her, or maybe she got bit by a bee. Evan, I had many times when I was a kid. But, that doesn't really pan out true. I've been working with people for a long time. I don't see any of that to pan out true. I found that over and over again, if I can open those patterns up and let them air a little bit, whatever that is in there kind of goes away until they get to the function where they're afraid to go outside and they don't do anything. And at that point in time, then they probably really need some far more professional therapy than this real simple system that we're going with. But most of you guys out there, this is just going to work for you tremendously well. So I know I talk on and on. I talk way too much. This is a really, and it's just so amazingly simple and so amazingly easy. Now, talk some friend of yours in to sit down and play with this a few times a week. Go for coffee. You could do this at a Starbucks. You could go anywhere. It won't make any difference. Nobody knows what you're doing. And half the time today, people are so unconscious running around with their phone in front of them that they have no clue. We only have 7 bits and you've got 4 or 5 bits in your phone. You can start to see that you're running into walls and doors, which is not unusual, right? So we need to expand it out. We need to be able to do some sorting. When all this came together back in the Stone Ages, we didn't have telephones to distract us, right? We were just busy looking at things that are going to eat us or something we could eat. The world has changed tremendously, tremendously. And so we're still operating with some really antiquated pieces of data. It can all be updated. Evolutionary mandates were intended to update all those things, but it does mean that we have to participate with it. Now, evolutionary mandates take 200 or 300 years, which means it doesn't care if you participate because you're just going to die before it's done. But if you can participate with it now, you can upgrade with it and you get a better quality of life and not a struggle, like trying to figure out whether it's going to rain tomorrow or trying to figure out how you're going to pay rent this month or whatever issue you're dealing with. So we're just trying to update. We're just trying to, here we go. You start to feel that calmness that starts to come in. I'm talking about me. I just felt that calmness come into me. And at that point in time, it just says, I said enough. All right. So thank you very much. This is class number 1. The notes in there will set you all up to be able to do the exercises with your friend. Have any questions, email me. If you're interested in the program, you want to do the other 6, then go ahead and email me and say, hey, I'm interested, and I'll give you directions from there. We can set it up. Also, I have a few of my teachers who have students in our teaching, and they want to work with me to put some class material together for their classes. Those things may be also available to you too. And so that will be through them. So I'm sure that they'll tag on a charge for their time. But if you're having a difficulty with this, then they could take you through step by step. You personally, you and your friend in front of the computer on a Zoom all together and guide you through it, right? So lots of options available to you. We're going to make it through this craziness together, and we're going to help each other out. And I think it's about time that we start to do that. So thank you very much, and look forward to hearing from you.